Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for inviting me to this lovely event, Hamara Mushaira. I'm so pleased to be here. Thank you, Feroza, for inviting me. I'm Nev March. I'm the recipient of the Mystery Writers of America Award for a Best First Crime Novel, which was a total surprise to me. A bit of a shock, actually, but it was wonderful because it launched my literary career. I've got one book out called Murder in Old Bombay, and a second book coming out this July called Peril at the Exposition. It starts, of course, it's going to have South Asian characters because I'm South Asian. I'm Zoroastrian. And so, yeah, it does have a Zoroastrian character in it. But the first book is really written from the point of view of an Anglo-Indian man. It's about a real tragedy that occurred in 1891, where two Parsi women fell from the top of Bombay University clock tower. This really happened. It's an unsolved mystery to date. And it bothered me enough that I researched it and finally came up with a fictional solution to what could have happened. I'm going to read it 3 pages only, but they're from the middle of the book. They're not the beginning. And you needed to know that in order to understand these 3 pages. So the chapter I'm going to read is called Confrontation. It's chapter 27. This is Captain Jim is the Anglo-Indian ex-soldier detective, and it's his voice, first-person point of view. Have a seat, Captain. Barjor is the father of the client's father. Have a seat, Captain. Barjor indicated the settee and dropped into a chair. I sat down with growing concern. He'd been a generous host all evening, but now his customary bonhomie was conspicuously absent. Had I given cause for rebuke? Searching my memory, brought forth no clues. Had something occurred this very evening? A long pause followed in which he appeared to consider an opening. However, he did not speak. Instead, he rose and went to the alcove by his desk that contained his saint's portrait. There, he bent his head before it and prayed softly. Remonstrations I could have managed, even an uncalled for reprimand. His strange expression was fear? Surely not. Some deep-seated worry, then. My puzzlement melted to compassion for my troubled host. Whatever it is, sir, let's have it, I said into the oppressive quiet. He returned after a few moments, his footsteps unwilling, and slumped on the brocade seat. His deep-set eyes regarded me steadily. Sometimes I'm not sure, he began, that I'm doing the right thing. It helps to speak to the Prophet. He motioned towards the alcove, saying, "You know we are Parsis, of course." I nodded, further mystified by his choice of topic. He continued, "But you may not know what that is. We are Zoroastrians, followers of that ancient prophet Zarathustra." Pointing at the saint's portrait, he went on, "We do not convert anyone to be Zoroastrian. Centuries ago, our ancestors came to Gujarat as refugees from Pars in Persia. We are very few, perhaps 100,000 in all." I waited. This history did not explain the ominous tone of his interview. He said, "So if a son or daughter marries someone who is not Parsi, well, they can no longer continue the race. They are as good as lost to us." I offered, "I've heard Mrs. Franji speak about it at breakfast." "Yes." His voice lifted in palpable relief. "So you see?" "Well, no." My words drew him back into a fretful state. He rocked in his chair. "Captain, you cannot marry Diana," he said finally. Whatever I had expected, it was not this. Astonishment gave way to bitterness. I was a mixed breed, a bastard not worthy of his daughter. Had I not seen that mix of pity and disapproval all my life? Indians did not tolerate the mixing of races any more than the English. In polite circles, a man who was happy until then to shake my hand would hear my name, James Agniotri, and pause. His shoulders would stiffen and he might spot an acquaintance across the room and need to speak to him. Women who might who seemed perfectly gracious as they heard my Indian surname. Their eyes might widen with understanding. Those quick glances of confirmation how well I knew them, and the reserve that followed, polite, distant, and final. But this from Barjor, whom I extolled as an exemplary father, that he thought so little of me, cut deep. I wiped emotion from my face, but now he seemed attuned to me and grimaced an apology. No, Captain, it's not that. I see great merit in you. We owe you a great deal. You are not responsible for an accident of birth. His chest swelled with a heavy breath. No, it is Diana. 2 brides were lost to us. To my clan, Captain. We cannot lose another. The creases around his mouth deepened. His voice dropped to a whisper. Our customs are all we have. He buried his head in his hands. This we cannot change. But why? Surely now he spoke to the saint rather than to me. I felt winded, out of breath from the unexpected punch to my gut. I hardly dared hope that Diana might come to care for me. Her light-hearted flirting this evening was surely no more than an affectation common amongst young women of her class. Yet we had shared a tender moment, as heady as the finest bourbon. I could still feel her closeness, the curve of her waist in my grip. When I moved to leave, her fingers on my hand, staying me, echoed my own reluctance to end our dance. Clearly, Barjor's words were aimed to snuff out that flicker of hope. Moreover, he placed the responsibility upon me to distance myself from Diana. He could have forbade me, even dismissed me, but he had not. He had simply asked me to leave her be with a father's prerogative, saying, young man, she's not for you. My ribs throbbed with a new ache. How could I answer? I felt heavy with regret. As I searched for words to voice my protest, I paused. Who else had he warned off? What else had he done? Barjor had just opened a path for me to ask about Kasim. Since Manik's obscure remark implied some cruelty on his part, what better time to put the matter to rest? I understand, sir, I said. May I ask about a different matter? He looked up and appeared heartened. Of course, Captain, anything. Who is Kasim? Had I struck him in the face, I could not have shocked him more. His lips parted and his ruddy cheeks paled. Barjor's manner shouted both guilt and remorse. Was Manik right then? Had this good man harmed a lowly servant boy? And we'll stop right there. Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We're going to move along, and you know, at a normal event like this, we would hear each other's applause, but it's understood, I think. So our next speaker is Sohrab Homi-Phrases, who is an award-winning writer who wrote a book called Go Home. And so Sohrab, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Momin. Thanks, everyone. Great to be back at Hamara Mushaira. So much fun, always. And to see all the SALA folk. So I do have a new book coming out later this year at a nice university press. And the title of the book is, get this, True Fiction. So there's a paradox for you. So I'm going to read from the original publication of the title story, True Fiction, in this lovely magazine, Flock. And I'm going to get right to it because Momin has been very strict about the time regulation. So True Fiction. And I'll just read the opening passage, which kind of sets up the meat of the story. An old friend from Bombay, unhappy with my loosely autobiographical stories, had this pointed instruction for me. You should write true fiction. I knew what he meant. He'd recognized an incident from our lives, though I thought I'd transformed it past recognition. Worse, he disliked a composite character whom he took to be his misrepresented self. Still, struck by his paradoxical phrasing, I said, "That is what I write. Stories are true, not factually, emotionally." "No," he said, and I could hear his aggravation. "You just muddle the facts. That's not fiction. You should make it all up." "What good is it then if it's just made up?" He'd struck a nerve. "Do you know how many readers prefer nonfiction now because they know it's real? About real people, not vampires and zombies. So write nonfiction. Write a bloody memoir and make it real. Make us us." Sure, I'd just be murdered by someone or the other in that memoir for one reason or another. That's all. "Right. There's no way I could get you right enough for you." It's true. He'd asked me point blank if that character was him. And when I said, "Of course not," his offended response was, "Of course not?" It's a no-win situation. Secondly, I continued, that muddling of the facts, as you so flatteringly put it, is what it takes to make a good story of our lives. "Maybe your life," he said, with a supercilious expression that, in all fairness, may have been in reaction to mine. I dropped the argument. It was going nowhere. "All right, so you go ahead and write the memoir. Let's see if anyone wants to read that. I'll stick to stories." But his paradox stayed on my mind. Here's the thing about Arun. He argues to win, not to get it right. He's sure he already is. Doesn't matter what the discussion's about. He's an expert, even if he isn't. So if an argument doesn't go his way, he won't admit he's wrong. He'll just argue harder. And if cornered, he's not above muddling the facts himself. I'm not sure when exactly that sense of omniscience grew within him. I can think back to before it did, when we were in short pants deliberating over deep-fried batwads in Campion School's noisy cafeteria. "When you're thinking," I'd asked, biting through greasy batter into turmeric yellow potato chunks, "you think in words?" The question had occupied me ever since Mr. Desar told us in English class, "Choose your words, boys, not the other way around." The idea of words choosing me felt more exciting. And suddenly my mind filled with their sounds. Choose, choose, choo-choo, chuk-chuk gadi, giddy, giddy up, upma, idli, dosa, masala, masala, Ben-Hur, chariot, carrot. Life revolved around food those days, even food I didn't like. The look on Arun's face, a smaller, lighter skinned, pretty boy face long before it tanned and fissured, told me he was thinking about my question while observing that very thought for its nature. Don't know. I just think. But like you talk, like the words batara vada, or how a vada looks. He looked uncertain. Want the picture? In color or black and white? Already, he found the uncertainty taxing and replied emphatically, "Color. Taste even." He bit into his batwad, eyes narrowing to indicate the tasting process. I suspect his self-confidence stemmed from being raised a mainstream, essentially ruling class Hindu in Hindustan, not a congenitally insecure minority Parsi, estranged in space and time from ancestral Persia. To his doting mother, he was her Raja, whereas mine fretted that Parvez, the name she'd given me, could be misconstrued by nationalist Hindus as Muslim. Here's where I make the obligatory disclaimer that the names have been changed to protect the innocent. except that there are no real innocents in a true story, unless there's a baby, or a puppy, or a fledgling. And not even the last if you're talking cuckoo chicks. The cuckoo mom lays her large egg in a little warbler's nest or a robin's, rolling one of the unwitting host's eggs overboard. Clearly inheriting those ruthless genes, the cuckoo chick hatches, looks around at the tiny warbler chicks taking up space, and shoves them over the edge. It's a monster right out of the shell. I'm not saying anyone in this story, young or old, is a monster. I am saying we're all complicated. Arun's early inquiries into the human psyche ran in a different direction than mine. You hate anybody in our class? He once asked me. We were older, maybe in our senior year, and now in long pants. I trotted out the names of a couple of fellows I didn't like, but he stopped me. Really hate, not don't like, hate. So I tried to put some emotion behind one of the names. It felt good to vent about the kid who wasn't there to defend himself against petty accusations that I can't even recall. But Arun wanted more than rhetoric. Would you kill him if you saw the chance? The idea both shocked and intrigued me in its leap to the extreme. Nothing in between. Not insulting, nor punching, nor kicking, not even breaking his arm with a move we'd learned in self-defense class, a move forbidden by our black belt Parsi instructor outside of an emergency. If and only if an attacker came at us with a raised knife or other weapon, we were to step inside, interweave an arm with his bent arm, and lever it back until it cracked at his shoulder socket. The attacker's screams were easy to conjure in our young heads, especially when our sparring partners brought us close to the edge. Now I experience a perverse thrill from imagining my chosen foe in extremis, before the brutality of the vision jerked me out of it. Kill him, I said, with a queasy smile. Don't think I would go that far. Arun nodded, looking faintly disappointed, but acknowledging reality. So it would be wrong to say we grew up to be different. We always were. And so were our journeys. Our destinations, not so much. He married traditionally, a Hindu woman, yet ended up divorced, a trailblazer in those days. I married an American, having moved my Parsi ass to another country, only to find that Iranian ancestry was more than a psychological issue here. And that divorce was as American as apple pie. I became an academic and a writer. He climbed the corporate ladder and, being Arun, climbed it to the top rungs of his multinational. Eventually, a step up from director of its Asia sector to director of the America sector brought him here. And he got in touch. So that sets the story up, and I'll stop there. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Fantastic. And you somehow managed to sound at ease and yet stay within the time period, but it just sounded so natural. So wonderful, wonderful work. And I know you wrote Go Home and 15 Views of Jacksonville, which was published in 2018. What's that from?
No, 15 Views of Jacksonville is an anthology in which...
Oh, this one you just read.
No, I read from one of the other stories, and a second story appeared in 15 Views of Jacksonville. My other book, aside from the novel Go Home that you kindly mentioned, my first book was also a collection of stories, Ticket to Minto, Stories of India and America, which happened to win the Iowa Award and is still the highlight of my life and career. But plenty of other news stories since the novel have been published, and those stories are now collected in the new book, True Fiction.
That's the one. Yeah. So it's true fiction. Okay.
True Fiction is the new book to come out late fall.
Okay.
And it'll be up for pre-orders pretty soon.
Very good. I wanted to make sure that Nev got her plug in for the two books that she's written too, Murder in Old Bombay and Peril at the Exposition, right? Okay, so our next speaker.
Mumin, can I make a quick request?
Yeah.
Very quick. The thing is, one of the joys of the conference in person is when we listen to the lovely authors, sometimes we can buy your books and you put beautiful, lovely little notes in them. If there is a way this can be arranged, if you can let Momin know or Firoza know or put that information in the chat box, we would love it, right? Like, Nev, I'm looking up your book on Amazon, but there's a different feel, right? When you have a little short note. And so if it is possible, if not, then, you know, I'm sure you'll find other ways of connecting. Thank you.
Yeah, great idea. If any of the authors here have a book you'd like to sell, you could maybe put a note in the chat box and people can click on it to go to the Amazon or wherever, you know, the bookstore of your choice. Well, our next author is Purvi Shah. I met her at another SALA conference years ago, and then I ended up getting to visit with her in her home of New York City. And then I've even assigned her book Terrain Tracks to several of my classes who then reached out to her. She was very kind to respond. And now she has since written another book, Miracle Marks, and that was published in 2019. And so without any further ado, Purvi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Momin. And Saurabh, it was lovely to hear all the sounds in your piece. And thank you to everyone who's gathered here. It's a joy to be with you. And in a Hamara Mushaira tradition, in a sort of permuted call and response, feel free in the chat. You know, I'll keep this a little bit interactive in the sense that if you have something that's on your heart that you're thinking about, or a word that is in your mind, feel free to put it in the chat. And I might read a poem that links to that. So again, if there's something that's on your heart or a word that you're thinking of, feel free to put it in the chat. I'm going to start with the opening poem from my book, Miracle Marks, which talks about what it means to be a woman, the sacred and equity issues through the figures of Mirabai, Saraswati, and Maya. And the opening poem is called The Poet Enters the Game, and it has an epigraph from Stephen Nikmanovich, which goes, there is an old Sanskrit word lila, which means play. The poet enters the game. Black blood of a star, bent light, or as we say, woman. Music coming from afar or within, and you know not. Skirts flaring, miniature circles of ardor, fertility of glances, chances, your dance as misplaced laughter, and blue wrists where your troubles return into a praise, echo saint song. Black blood of a star, bent light, or as we say, woman. Mira says, my marriage was a scandal. My love never was. You spy a silver flute seducing sorrows and prefer your own drum, devotion as an alphabet without a final letter. Black blood of a star, bent light, or as we say, woman. Women astonish you, and then you become one. Women astonish you, and then you become one. Women astonish you, and then you become one. So part of what I was thinking about as I was working on this book is the high rate of female infanticide and femicide throughout South Asia. And so part of what I was looking at was the idea of this missing Saraswati River and all of these missing girls. And also thinking about, in a tradition, if you believe in reincarnation, what is the guarantee that you are always the same gender in every lifetime? And what does that mean then to be a woman? Oh, thank you. I love the cup, actually, and I will say, I'll plug, because this is an amazing artist. Her name is Pragati Sharma, and she lives actually in the Bay Area. So if you like this cover, she's an incredible artist. So yeah, I'm so grateful. Every time I look at my book, I'm so grateful to have such a beautiful cover. And there's a longer story about how I had to fight for this cover because the original covers were very exotic looking, but that's also US publishing. That is a longer story for a different time period. So this poem is called Saraswati Marks Lineage of the Missing. And it starts with an epigraph from Courtney O'Brien. The United Nations estimates nearly 200 million girls around the world are missing. Saraswati marks lineage of the missing. I have known a grandmother, and two have known me. You search for missing limb, reveal a tree with disparate pattern of branches, one side whistling, the other accordion of leaves. You expect a thinning at the top, but wonder if this tree finds terribly bruised, a woman with half her hair, a woman blistering bald sense in wild stutter. Lineage often skips a relation. You search for an ancestor. In your dreams, a daughter travels. She wakes you when you need to rise, kindles in your skin scent of the tea she's about to brew. Another journeys with you on the way to a crowded road, haggling with the vegetable seller for a better rate. She's gotten so wise in so few years. Some mothers count off years on a ruler against a white wall, children growing shoulders and span of necks. If you could mark your unmade memories, every black wall would need altars, room now for praise. A mythical river can spawn civilizations, but can a mythical girl civilize? You tell one story and hope it survives. A young girl holds the subway door for an old Chinese man who needs a few more steps to reach. The girl says, "Do not mind your battered wings. The peregrine nearly became extinct, chemicals singeing generations." So you move around your pain from a womb to a shoulder. You float across aerial silks, you Pacific sky. She says, now the peregrines are returning. Fury keeps a river invisible. You bruise a ventricle or chafe a throat as you recover sore, a realm where every elbow has room. Pain is temporary, flight is not. You see trees shedding leaves you never saw they bore. You observe girls sleeping in the missing river. Shh, do not wake them. You may disturb dreams, birthing. You take out your ruler and in the unseen waters, notch each body growing. Thank you. And I'll end with this last poem. When I was at a poetry reading, and there were people actually embroidering as we were reading, which was really lovely, just to get a sense of, again, how people were responding. And then I noticed that this white man had embroidered dowry. And obviously I had not mentioned dowry once. So it's a very short poem. Saraswati nods the white man who, after hearing her liberation poems, embroiders dowry. Even now, goddesses outlast colonialism. Thank you, everyone. And I'll put my Venmo information so I can send you a book if you want to Venmo me and write an inscription if that sounds good to y'all. So thank you so much. Lovely to be with you.
So glad you could be here. And hopefully you were early enough in there, the program so it's not so late for you. But our next.
This is an old lady now. I need to get to bed.
Our next creative writer is actually a professor of English and world literature at James Madison University. And her book is Literature, Gender, and the Trauma of Partition, The Paradox of Independence. And I saw her nodding her head when I mentioned my father was born in Aurangabad, but then moved to Karachi. She understands this notion of partition very well on an academic level, but she's also a nonfiction, I guess I should say a novelist. So Dabali, no? Oh, okay. Well, the floor is yours. You can tell us more about yourself.
Thank you, Momin. Well, thank you for the generous introduction. And I wish I could make the claim to being a novelist. And it's humbling to be in this community of wonderful creative writers, poets, novelists. I am actually a translator. So what I'm reading this evening is a short excerpt from a novel I translated. The novel is by the Bengali writer Sunil Gangopadhyay, and I'm reading the first few pages of my translation. Whose photo is that? That's my father. No, I mean, who's the man standing with him? That gentleman killed my father. Topon gazed at the photograph in silence. He moved closer to it, as if the light in the room was dim. It was an old photograph, its original tones fading to sepia, yet still definitely identifiable. Somewhere far away on this planet, there exists the land of Bengal. And in Bengal, a little village, a village school. Standing in front of the school building was a towering Englishman, and facing him, a gaunt, smallish Bengali man. In his hands, the Englishman held a set of books tied with a red ribbon, and on his face, he wore a charitable smile. The Bengali man's hands were joined in a namaskar. The photograph had been taken at least 30 years ago, but the smiles on their faces had remained undimmed. Topon did not sigh, but his Topon did not sigh, but his feet seemed nailed to the ground. Pain surged through his belly. He got cramps whenever he felt depressed. It could be the beginning of an ulcer. He was living in New York the first time it happened. Along with the pain, he had thrown up blood. The doctor advised him to never leave his stomach empty, to always carry biscuits to nibble on, and to avoid feeling depressed. Depression was at the root of his gastrointestinal disorder. It's not that Topon wanted to be melancholy. Following the doctor's instructions, he had immersed himself in constant partying. This evening too, he had come prepared to have a good time, but London's damp weather, the ugly fog, and to top it all, coming face to face with this inconceivable photo just before the merriment was enough to depress him. Taking his hand out of his pocket, Topon patted the frame lightly, a hefty black wooden frame. The gold inscription on it was no longer legible. It seemed to Topon as if the photo had waited in this room all these years, just so that one day he might see it. Who else but Topon could grasp it so fully? Alice said, "You haven't taken off your overcoat yet. Goodness, your shoes are soaking wet. Why don't you warm your feet at the heater?" Topon slowly removed his coat and shoes. Still in his socks, he sat down on the divan and put his feet up on the side of the heater. Then he asked calmly, "Alice, your father was in Bengal. How come you never told me?" Alice was busy setting the table. She said, "Didn't I? Yes, he was in Bengal a long, long time ago." She opened the gift Topon had placed on the dining table. Her eyes lit up when she saw that it was a bottle of champagne. She murmured softly, "Champagne? Gosh, this is damn expensive. Are you a Maharaja or something?" "Where in Bengal was your father, Alice? In the East?" "Yes, Dhaka. Do you know how to open a bottle of champagne?" "What's so difficult about opening a champagne bottle? Tell me if you know how to do it. Have you opened one before?" Questions like these offend Tapun, regardless of whether they come from a man or a woman. He said, "How many bottles of champagne have you seen in your life, Alice? I have drunk many, many times that number in the last 5 years. I hope you have proper glasses." "Don't be funny, Tapun. Open it." Tapun held the bottle in one hand, and with the thumb of the other, he deftly pressed the cork. Following a pum, foam gushed from the bottle. Without spilling a drop, he put the bottle on the table with a thud. A sweet sour aroma filled the room. Tapun asked again, "When was your father in Bengal?" Alice dashed to the cupboard to get the glasses. Returning with them seconds later, she said, "Let's not watch a film this evening. In fact, let's not go out at all. Just the two of us here. Alice, why aren't you answering me?" Alice was startled. Her exuberance suddenly dampened. She turned around a little bewildered. "Answering what, Tapun? I've been asking you repeatedly, when was your father in Bengal? Are you worried that if you tell me, I'll figure out your age? Well, I already know that you're no less than 30. In the last few days, Alice had learned something of Tapun's disposition. Nevertheless, she couldn't help feeling insulted at his taunt about her age. Like a hurt child, she said, "Why would I hide my age? I'm 30. I've already told you that. Why are you being so rude, Tapun? I thought that this evening we'll find better things to talk about than my age or things past. My father was in Bengal in 1937-38, just before the Second World War started. I was 4 or 5 then. Were you here at that time? Or in Bengal?" "I was with my father. Mum hadn't yet. Do you remember Bengal at all?" "A little bit, like a dream. It was so lush everywhere. The rivers so expansive. The Padma. Alice, do you know that I too am a Bengali?" "Of course I knew. You said so yourself. Doesn't it make you furious when you see a Bengali or hear about Bengal?" "Why should I be angry? Such a beautiful place." "Because a Bengali man killed your father." Suddenly, Alice let out a strange scream. "Please, please don't." Tapun stood up quickly. What? What happened?" "Please, Tapun, don't bring it up again. I don't want to think of it ever. We are friends. You haven't hugged me today, not even once. Come." Thank you very much. I'll stop there. This is the book, Blood, from which I read that excerpt. Thank you.
Beautiful. Would you please do us a favor and write the name of that author in the chat?
I certainly will. Thank you.
That would be super. Wonderful. Now, I want to just acknowledge that a few people have come and gone already, and they include John Hawley. I saw him here. He's a past president of the SALA, and also Nalini Iyer, who is the current editor of the South Asian Review. And she said she needed to leave just a little early tonight, but she sent her apologies for having to leave early. I also wanted to acknowledge that Cynthia Leenertz is our fantastic president of the organization, and she is here tonight. And so thank you for being here and for just being so supportive of this Hamara Mushaira, and we are grateful for your presence tonight. You'll get the floor a lot more tomorrow, but it's nice that even if people don't feel like they're going to read, that they're still here to listen and appreciate. And so without further ado, we'll move on to our next presenter, reader, Shweta Rao Garg, and she is a multi-talented woman with, she's a a graphic novelist and a poet, but also an academic. And so, I don't mean to slight anybody if I don't say Dr. Garg or Doctor. You know that in this kind of venue, a lot of times we just go by our first name, right? So, Shweta, you have the floor now.
Thank you so much, Momin. I see some old familiar faces. So lovely to see you, Anirudh, after so many years. And Professor Josawala, finally we meet. And by the way, so some of your readings is still reverberating in my head, so I need to sort of clear it. I'm going to read from my first book of poems, which is called Of Goddesses and Women. And the cover is very special because it also has the painting with which I did. So it is like, yeah, doubly loved by me. So the first poem I'm going to read, and because this is Sala, my first, but of course, definitely not the last, I thought you would appreciate it more than any other audience. It's called MS Word. MS Word overwhelms with pre-decided tabs, pre-designed fonts, and autocorrect options. MS Word shows language is a systematized manifestation of certain binary codes. It edits and tracks changes, saves paper, spends electricity. MS Words unfailingly fences my verses with chilly green lines and objects to the sentence fragmentations of my fragmented writings. It adorns my name with a doubt-ridden red barbed line and suggests everyday English words as more agreeable alternative for my name. Dare I disagree with paper white MS Word when my thoughts are ungrammatical, my name is incorrect, and the town where I live non-existent in the linguistic map. P.S. Sweat Road is the MS approved version of my name, Shweta Rao. What's yours? The next, I love, I'm a filmy buff, like we all are, we all South Asian, are and South Asian scholars are. So this one, so I made like my own sort of terse rereading, re-rendering of Bollywood flicks. And this one is Mughal Azam, with all due apologies to everybody who loves the classic. This one is called The Mughals, and very small one. The much adored idiosyncratic emperor raids sun's love nest. The sun, excessively, obsessively Oedipal, revels in his newfound masculinity. Isn't afraid of Papa with pleated pants, whilst the veil of vulnerability between the towering hypermales, the pomegranate blossom, faints femininely. Now, this responds to this iconic scene where Akbar, walks in and he sees Salim and Anarkali kind of making out. It's a beautiful scene, and it's almost like he interrupts the entire thing that was going on, and I could never get that out of my brain. Probably the last poem that I have is the collection is called Of Goddesses and Women. So obviously, I'm also obsessive about the whole goddesses figure. Through my art and through my writing, I like to humanize them. Sometimes have tea with them, have conversations with them, because that's what we do with our deities, don't we? We create them, we sort of also entertain them. So this one is called Kali, Comfortee. Kali, comforty. Milk, rose water, occasional blood are some beverages you have had, but I can guarantee you'd love the taste of tea. I shall add ginger, some mint, a dash of sugar, if you will. But Kali, you must come home for tea. Whenever you're free from dishum and you think you need a break, take a rake and just come. If you allow a selfie too for my timeline, I will keep it simple. Just some cookies, then we will chat. About what? Usual work, weather, husbands. I have a hunch we will be friends. We shall go out for shopping and lunch. Sorry, you. I'm sure you need to be elsewhere and stop the world from destruction. I don't need to be going to buy vegetables for dinner. But remember, there is no formality to come home for tea. Thank you.
I thought you might want to show us one of your pieces of art if I let you share the screen, but if you want. Okay, there you go. Ooh, here we go. Nice. Very good. All right. Our next speaker is Kashyana Singh, and I'll let you have the floor because I know that Kashyana is a poet. She might have a few lined up for us tonight.
Thank you. Can you hear me fine? Just an audio check? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you for having me. What a pleasure. I'm humbled and honored to be here with everybody. Beautiful readings so far. I am going to read from two of my books. My first collection was called Shelling Peanuts and Stringing Words. And I'd not initially planned to read that, but Mermain, your story about the partition. And so I think I have to read that poem. And my second poem will be from Woman by the Door. This is my latest collection, just came out in February with Apprentice House Press, and I'll give the link and everything else in the chat for anybody who's interested. I'll jump in. The first poem is called it's called Mangroves, and it's from my first collection, Shelling Peanuts and Stringing Words, and I'll let the poem speak for itself. Act 1. I set out once looking for mangroves with haunted stories about the withered woman with feet that turned inwards, the mangroves with secret spells hovering over lampposts, the mangroves where boys scuffled and men gathered to grope for survival, the mangroves that displaced the rotten smell of burning flesh as each canopy collapsed into an Asian pile. Act 2. I waited to enter the looming arch of the house that echoed my mother's desires in entombed gold and treasures, the house that watched, silent, the gates that creaked, each howling ground, recollecting a plea. Act 3. I walked the platform again, chugging wheels that recited memories of trains, moving like ghosts between places, transporting phantoms. The platform I walked again covered me in soot of butchered history. I lifted some soil, some scars, some sketches. Act 4. I opened the tall gates and entered against my will into the portico to my beginnings. I swaddled myself with the elegance of my mother, the industriousness of my father, the grit of my brothers, the sacrifice of my sisters, the flawlessness of their songs as they chanted, possessed to their dead and their crippled and their humiliated and their young and their newborn. Act 5. I bow in thankfulness and accept the warm tea served by the house lady on the veranda. Mangroves. This was written after my father visited his home in Pakistan. Many years later. He was probably 9 or 10 at the time of partition. I'll move on to the other poem, and this is from Woman by the Door, which is my latest collection. And Purvi, inspired by you, I picked up this poem as I was sitting here. I'd planned for something else. Give me one moment. And it's called How a Woman Delivers Hope. How a Woman Delivers Hope. She embroiders the tundra with her hushed moans, breathless, as a tightness tugs and untugs within her, hesitating, punctuating. She watches the air meet flesh at the outline of her being as calm unsettles into rivulets flowing from inside of her. She pushes into beginnings and rises into endings, still, patient, warrior, woman, giving birth. As the universe rises in Tumri, swirling slogans into light, she follows other women, their flaming, screaming, breathing, as her urging sinew and muscle shift, pulsing her towards life. She renews herself with a sumptuous feast of goddess light. As it ebbs and flows, unfurling grit, reciting the new, reciting the new, reciting the new, as the midwife guides, she oozes eternity into the space between her thighs, rising into a crescendo. The protests outside grow vacant with cries. She enunciates freedom for her body and offers an exile to that which was held within hers, pushing, brimming, pushing, bearing, delivering hope into a pregnant pause. And a glistening head now emerges into the hands of her convulsing grace, into fragility of a land that walks barefoot, into earth men that pedal her to goddesses, into monuments that stand on quicksands, into rivers sterile for they are bleeding dry, into flags that flutter with septic infusions, into stuttering prayers of a laboring country. How a woman leaves behind drenched stories, sputtering. From the stone of her wasted wombs, she delivers enough, drenched, wet, unfolding hope. How a woman delivers hope. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's what I had for today, and I will share the link to my work if you would be interested.
Awesome. Kashyana, you might have the award, you might win the award for most incredibly beautiful website. I think if everyone here, a lot of you have really nice websites, but yours is very nicely done. And I put it in the chat. And also I noticed in your bio that, in your portfolio kind of, that you've done a TEDx talk.
Yes.
And so, and we have just a little bit of time because you went a little shorter than 10 minutes. Could you just tell us how that process went? How did you become a TED talker?
Yeah, first of all, my TED talk is on the subject, and that's my mantra of life, is work as worship, is what the TED talk was about. And how it happened was really, it was an application process. It was at the at a library system in Chicago, which is where I was earlier for many years. And so you apply by creating a little snippet of your TED Talk proposal. It goes through a selection process, and you get to do it. And
now you've become independently wealthy from it?
Oh no, not at all. I'm still a starving poet. But thank you for sharing and asking. I appreciate it.
I wanted to acknowledge another of the people that's on the executive team with SALA, and he's just been so fantastic in his role as the web manager, but also just as a dear friend. His name is Aniruddha Mukhopadhyay, and I just want to say thank you for being here tonight. And you've already heard that he's got good ideas and good feedback. So Ani, thank you for being here, you big goober. So we will now move along to Zilka Joseph. And she's written several books, but she also should get some kudos for the covers of her books. But one of them is In Our Beautiful Bones. And there are some more that she could probably list on her in the chat as well, in terms of her website, which is also very enriched and beautifully done. So Zilka, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Momin. It's just such a pleasure to be here. I want to say a special thank you to you and Firoza for being so warm and welcoming. I have heard of Hamara Mushaira years ago. I used to work for the South Asian Center at U of M years ago. And I was like so intimidated that I never approached anybody. So I'm glad I had the courage this time to do so. Purvi, wonderful to hear you. Your work was gorgeous, and I've heard you before, so this is wonderful. All right, so I have 3 chapbooks and 2 full-length books. My first full-length, called Sharp Blue Search of Flame, was from Wayne State University Press. I live in Ann Arbor. I teach privately and I coach writers. I edit people's manuscripts and help them get published. So that's my job here. I teach workshops as well. Anyway, this book came out from Wayne State and it was a finalist at the Forward Indies Book Award. So I'm going to first read a poem from here, and it's called Bird in a Blizzard. Bird in a blizzard. This is when you know you should have stayed home. This is when you know this is not your element. When you know you have been blown way off course, that water changes its face every day, and the faces you love blur in that churning. That the whispers in the thick flood of flakes come from elsewhere. That the ones who gave you shelter are gone. That the cracking of the spine of the frozen river will be the last sound you will hear. And the thump, thump, thump you hear in your head is someone trapped inside your heart. Yes, this is when you know your ancestors are wanderers, singing tunes you never knew you knew. You remember every word of that song that the wind rips apart and flings, but how quickly your throat fills with snow. And when you turn again, you shiver as if you are wingless. You can move in only one direction now, deeper. The second poem I'm going to read, thank you. Second poem I'm going to read is a short poem called Havan. And as you all know, the implications of that word, Havan is sacrifice and Havan, the sacrificial fire. So I'm going to give you a very quick look at the page with the zigzag on it. And it's fragments, it's in fragments. So Havan. He got angrier. They lifted the blue plastic can from the kitchen floor. My hand haldi streaked. I cried out. I backed away, ran toward the bedroom. The old lady held on to my sari pallo, pulled me hard. She was 70, but she was strong. I could see her beetle-stained teeth close to my face. Jagged yellow bone, cage door opening, fingers like steel hinges, creaking, Krishna, 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 pay my dowry, oh Krishna, I have no children. Murmuring in the peepal trees, rain of thin glass, bangles breaking, mouth full flood of kerosene, generous as love. Blue god flesh on fire like sindoor in my hair, easily caught like ghee and grain eaten whole. Take it all, oh witness, union divine, no holy Ganga water, no sweetness like jasmine or sandalwood, this burning, this flame eternal. Thank you. The next poem I'm going to read is from chapbook that came out and also won a Best Indie Book Award recently. It's called Sparrows and Dust. And this is a poem that was inspired by Rethke, Theodore Rethke, our famous Michigan poet, and lives in Saginaw, in the Saginaw area. And they had sent out a call to a few Michigan poets to write a poem that was inspired by Rethke for their calendar, for Friends of Rethke. So they made a beautiful calendar of it, and they printed my poem on one of the the pages there. It's called Sparrows and Dust, which is the name of this book. And the epigraph goes, I believe in the sparrow happy on gravel. And I must tell you, I do write a lot about with animal images and bird images in my books. I believe in the sparrow happy on gravel, from Rethke's praise to the end. The first time I noticed a cloud of dust rise from the playground, I squinted my 6-year-old eyes and saw sparrows flailing about in gravelly dirt. My mother told me, look, they're having their daily dust bath. See how well they wash themselves. And I thought, such a cleansing, dust with dust, letting what's broken, biting, or dead flake off. I have always loved house sparrows, even when they drove us mad with their noisy fights and ferocious nesting inside our second floor Kolkata flat. Raining dirt, twigs, eggs, and just born chicks on us when rival pairs fought for territory on tops of cupboards, chinks in clutter and junk stored everywhere. Our house was heaven and a kind of hell. Sometimes when streaking in from the hot sun, one would fly into the fan's spinning blades. With a soft gasp, it would die at my feet. Sometimes how it struggled, poor thing. I would cradle its head as blood seeped into my hand, give it water, whisper comfort. Often, when I shut its eyelids, a vision of my own feathered body lying lifeless below would flash by. I hovered above, as if I have been somewhere else. Weeping, I willed them, come back from the dead. Failed shaman, I never saved anyone or anything. My parents, the animals and birds we loved, the locked flat falling to ruin. Now, years later, in short Michigan summers, I look for flusters of dust, feel a warm thrill in my aching bones when I see these birds squirm in soil, then spring from a cloud, fluffing, cheeping, cleansed, whole. I think of the little known tale I read about the precocious 5-year-old trickster Jesus, who played by the river one Shabbat evening and who shaped 12 sparrows from wet clay. When his father scolded that he had violated the holy day, he clapped, shouting to the birds, remember me, you who are now alive. And the living sparrows rose and flew away. And thank you so much. And the last poem I'm going to read is from my newest book, In Our Beautiful Bones, gorgeous cover artwork by Siona Benjamin. She's a Ben Israel artist. Please check her out. I'm a Ben Israeli poet and writer. So I was so proud to have her artwork on my book. And I changed my mind a little bit and decided to read a different poem from this book, just because I think everybody in this gathering will understand and get this poem in a way that maybe others may not, and you'll see why. And I wanted to explain the form to you. It's called an abecedarian. I'm sure you're familiar with it, but I got a little sassy and made it a double abecedarian. So on one side, I have the alphabet in regular lines, and then I have the alphabet also as a last word, character of every word at the end. And it is also inspired by the Discourse of the Logic of Language by M. Norswe Sepp Philip. I'm sure you've heard and read her work, and very, very powerful. So I've imitated some of her language, as you'll see. And it's called A to Z of Foreign Anguish. A is for anguish, says my mummy tongue, my lingo, la, la, la. But English is my foreign father tongue, daddy lang, blab, blab, blab. Colonists with your white gaze told our stories with classic demagoguery, tyranny, manifest destiny, excuses you forged evil tales to transform us into demons, crushed truths with vile, flippant lies. What about us? How you ravaged us. Scepter and staff ground down our culture. Kings of erosion and erasure, how long has your terror ruled? Your knives at our children's throats. Who washes Indians out of every picture? Who conquered our lands crying, I just come in peace? Guns in your hearts, greed in your DNA. The Raj kept us slaves in our own land, took our tea, spices, jewels, broke our back, lashed and tortured us. What's in your crown? Our Kohinoor. Oh, cruel masters, recorders of the inferior race, our clever Sahib and Mame, natives, like insects you labeled us, with fine calipers and condescension. Oppressor, the nightmare still lives, the hate systems that never go. Oppressor, pain is embedded in our bones. You poisoned our wells. Now you dump questions on us. You teach us civility. Listen to our Q&A, our A&Q right out of our mouths. You shove the father tongue down our savage and shithole countries' throats. Destroyed histories, literatures, tongues, made us ugly in our own eyes, made us hate ourselves, split us, shattered us, turned Hindu against Muslim, Muslim against Hindu, viceroys and priests, you ruled, you hunger converted us, O holy reverend white man. Was sweet Jesus's face fair? He was a humble dark-skinned Jew. Xanax, will it help? When we invite you to our open table, you vex yourself. You cry, where your current foreign anguish? That we can sway zeitgeist, world biz, karma, got heart, got English, chutzpah, pizzazz. And I'll end there. Thank you. I'll put my details in the chat box. Please contact me. I would love to sign and mail you a book if you would like. So thank you all for listening.
Perfect. You anticipated my request. Thank you so much, Silka.
I'll do that. Thank you.
And I'm so happy that anyone who has ever felt too intimidated to be a part of Hamara, hopefully you'll understand it's a very, very friendly audience and you are all welcome. Please continue to come. And we want you to feel that this is kind of a familiar home for you. So we appreciate it. And also just another note, I've already mentioned, I don't know, in Harry Potter, I guess I might be considered a muggle. I don't know. What is the half-breed? What's the, I'm not totally a magician and not totally a
Mudblood.
Mudblood. That's even worse, right? So I would be the mudblood, but I've always felt at home in these gatherings, and also in the non-South Asian gatherings. I hope that anyone here who feels like that they're not from Pakistan or Bangladesh or India or Sri Lanka or wherever, that they still can be part of this community. And so again, thank you, Cynthia, who's she's got South Asia in her bloodstream. So she is and I mean the soul of her. So nobody should feel unwelcome or too intimidated for this group. If you love the South Asia diaspora or world culture, whatever, you should be part of this. So I don't know, I'm not speaking very eloquently, but I just want you to understand and feel the welcoming of it. Just as someone who grew up not really feeling at home or welcome in either completely, but feeling like I was both and as opposed to neither nor. So our next speaker is Shruti Sareen. She's a poet who's been published in several journals, especially in India. She does a blog, and Shruti, we're eager to hear your poems.
Is my video on? Can you see me? I'm not sure.
Yes, we can. You've got the microphone.
Okay, yeah, because I can't see myself. Just a second.
There you are. We can see you.
We can see you.
Okay.
To turn her camera on. Maybe her camera is.
Yeah, we see her.
Okay, is it fine? Because if it's
Yes.
fine, it's fine. Yeah. Right. So this is my first book of poetry, which I just got published, which like you from last year, 2021. I'll give a brief introduction to myself. So I was born and brought up in Varanasi. Then I came to Delhi. I studied from Indraprasth College for Women. I have a PhD in Indian feminisms in the 21st century, women's poetry in English. And now it is going to come out as a book from Routledge in this year. I teach literature in various colleges and universities of Delhi, wherever I happen to get a job. I've written a novel, The Yellow Wall, for which I still have to edit and seek publishers. And yeah, and I was an invited poet last year in the Poesia 21 festival organized by Russia. And currently I'm working on a manuscript which is around the lives of queer writers and artists. So I don't know, I'm trying to do an epistolary kind of thing for queer writers and artists. Right. I'll talk a little bit about the book before I read the poems. The title, A Wish Like You, appeared to me in a dream at 3 a.m. This is also a phrase in the last of the dream series in this book. The title means to be bewitched by someone, whether good or bad, right or wrong, to be entranced and intoxicated by a woman. A mixture of intense love and intense pain led to this ambiguous word, which has both positive and negative connotations. The political poems in this collection too are also decidedly wicked, and yes, all the influence of the wicked, witchy woman. The poems in this collection are arranged in the form of a story, adolescence to falling in love to intense loss and deep depression, and finally through acceptance to some sort of release. Finally come to the poems themselves. Right. So begin with a very short one, a Requiem for a Dream. For SALA is the sweet girl, the teacher said, and she writes lovely poems. She flashed her a precious smile. Stars rose in her eyes that night and gave birth to a dream. Another day, she avoided Fasola's gaze, returned a poorly marked paper, praised the stout girl over there. A sacred dream died its death and buried itself in the classroom dust. One day the dream will learn from Sylvia and Lady Lazarus and rise again. Next one is called Baidyo. Baidyo means elder sister in Assamese. Assam is a state in India, so in Assamese it means elder sister. You said I remind you of your sister. When you said I remind you of your sister when she was very young. Sometimes I think I could have been your littlest sister, could have played with you, could have read with you and grown up with you. Sometimes I think I could have been a Homia. I look at your sister, she is like you, but not a mirror image. Sometimes I think I could be her. I could be her sister too, you, her, and me too. I could sister love you, sister look up to you, and sister tease you then. I could take that as fundamental fact before I took on the world. Sometimes I think I could have called you Baidyo. Right. Birthing the body. You dress just like your mother, you said. Why? I was flummoxed. I had never thought I dressed like my mother. I had hardly thought about the way I dressed at all. I wore whatever people gave me. I privileged the inner over the exterior. I thought fancy clothes as being frivolous. I did not know that I repeated the age-old privileging of mind over body, man over woman, spiritual over physical. You taught me how to own my body, to play with it, experiment. The purpose of dressing is to feel beautiful, not only to look. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and my physique was similar to yours. The dark skin, the long face, the lean frame, and the long black rippled hair. So as I darkened my eyes, put up my hair, slipped in danglers, pierced navel and nose, and inked a tattoo like you, truthfully the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, I started to fall in love with the image I saw in the mirror, my body, and the way I adorned it, owned it, even when thoughts and emotions were in disarray. Instead of dressing like my mother, I started dressing like you. If my mother birthed my body, so equally did you. Okay. Another one is snapshots. Pink petals are strewn on the ground. Wet, bare black boughs are sent to the blue. The empty office is crowded, haunted by ghosts and poltergeists. Room number 34 to my left. I sit on the steps and find myself sitting there 6 years ago. I hear voices from within the locked classroom. I am standing under the deodar-like tree, touching its bark, remembering two people long ago, surrounded by girls and memories and solitude. I am near the canteen lawns, cleaning, painting. Now I am insulting her, sitting on a bench. Now standing at the fence in another world. Walking from the star flats. But why does that PCO man think I live there? I bent over to smell the white fragrance, to touch the wild frangipani. It is night now. We are screaming, laughing, rolling over, my friend and I. We are delighted. We are mad. We are in love. I walk the empty corridors. KG hostel first floor. Did you not know that someone took me for a ghost once at 3 a.m.? I am a mad woman pacing the sports field now. I am the omnipresent witch. You might know, they used to call me the college haunter. I walk on air. I walk in desire, in sleep, in dream, in angst, in love, in memory, in search, in restless longing. I walk in abject humiliation. I walk with utmost happiness. I transport myself and walk in thought. I am frame flitting at the edge of one photograph, at the corner of another. I am inside the picture. I used to wonder why people photograph such a voyeuristic, intruding, elitist art. I know now why people photograph, so that within them the soul spirit of a place doesn't die, so that years later they can frame flit and throb live and piece together a mosaic, a dream, a fragmented collage. Exile, an ode to my happy place. It is a wound ceaselessly burning that no medicine can ever heal. You cannot speak about it in the first person. I tried, I couldn't. It is in my bloodstream. It is in my silences when I look away. It is in my hot secret tears. It is rarely in my speech. Sometimes I try to distance it while speaking, like jocularly, like a face-painted masked clown at the circus. Because how else do I speak? That which is too intimate for speech, that with which my pulse and heartbeat throbs night and day, that which is tattooed on my heart, skin, soul with indelible ink, that which I live in my dreams when I cannot in reality, that which is mine, with me always, no matter how far away I am from it, that which I always hold magical memories of, no matter how bitter the hurt, how devastating the grief. Oh, beautiful, wondrous place, you are precious, you are loved, you are mine, you are forever home. My heart is a poor student. For perhaps the 50th time in 2 weeks, I pick up my heart, open it, explain to it. The same words I have repeated the evening before. I have gone through the same arguments, the same reasoning. But my heart is stupid. It is a fool. It forgets it all, and I have to explain it all over again. My heart is stubborn. It asks, too many questions. It disbelieves. It does not accept. My heart is too soft. That is its biggest failing. It whimpers with a scolding. It cries when beaten with a stick. My heart is a poor student. An easy teacher may have felt sorry for it. But perhaps you need to be strict with this heart to the point of sadism or sadomasochism. Banish it from the classroom. Imprison it within walls. Sting slap it. Make it submit. Scream at it until it is ready to learn, until it is pliable, until it admits its faults, until it is willing to work hard, until it learns strength. Then the heart will be readmitted back into the classroom. With weak students like my heart, you may sometimes have to use force. I have a few more. I don't know if I am trying to read too many. The next one is called belief.
Shruti, can I ask you to read one more, a shorter one, please?
Okay, and then end with that?
Yes, please.
Okay, I think I've took too many. Fine.
That's okay.
My skin is patterned with scars you have carved. Purple, blue, green, black, patched grotesque shapes of angst. Much like the marks I cut clawed on you, bruises that bleed internally, eternally. Through stifled wounds and injuries you have been, my metaphor of all that is pure and good, beautiful and true, my selfish symbol for faith. When the dreams on quiet nights stretch on into the waking I possess, a knowing certitude, an arrogant belief, which I then spent every waking moment doubting that you still like me, retain your belief in me. You don't say it, you won't show it, but you won't deny it, will you?
Thank you so much, Shruti.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to give you a forecast of where we are. Very next, I think everyone will understand if we allow Farokh Suntuk to go next. And then I got a special request because it's a special circumstance, and that is Kalpana Singh Chitnis is, it's her birthday today. And so she's got a family who wants to celebrate it with her and take her away from us and do some celebrating. So if you don't mind, if we could just sort of alter the preparation plan kind of schedule and just vary it a little bit, let Farokh go next, then Kalpana, and then celebrate Manjula, and then insert Masrufra back into the program there, if that would be okay. Is that good? Okay. So our next speaker is Farokh Suntuk, and he is my second most favorite Farokh, the first one being Freddie Mercury. But he has written a book called The People We Know. And so Farokh, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Moomin, and thank you also, Firoza, for inviting me to this. I have to say that I feel quite nervous because unlike all the other people who have been participating, I'm a total novice in this area. I don't have a whole lot of books to show off. This is my very first attempt at creative writing. It's a novel. The only other writing I've ever done has been actually writing a business book, because my background is completely different from that of most of all of you, not in the creative world at all, but rather in the world of consulting and coaching executives in English. So I'm going to be reading the first chapter. It's very brief. It's only about 5 minutes long, of my book. It is set in Mahabaleshwar, which is a hill station near Bombay. The end was near. Yet, in these final moments, she felt her senses spring to life. Everything around her came into focus. every leaf etched against every other leaf, every twig jostling for her attention. Her ears twitched at the sound of unseen animals, real or imagined, furtively doing whatever they do when darkness falls. And she smelt, as she had never smelt before, the fragrance of moistened earth mingling with the smoky sweetness of village wood fires. She walked past the sign pointing to Niddlehole, where the sheer rock juts out over the valley and splits to form the eye of a needle. Straight ahead of her was a wide open space, saffron and daylight, but now barely distinguishable from the slate gray of the distant foliage lacing the edge of the cliff. Something made her turn round for one last time. Barely half an hour ago, under the gaze of the evening sun, she had been anxious she would be caught in this act. But when the sun melted into the contours of the mountains, the twilight that crept in offered shelter. Now, instead of the patchwork wilderness of the Krishna Valley, all she could see ahead of her was a wash of blue-grays and murky browns merged in a mist of ancient desolation. She carried on walking towards the precipice. Having reconnoitered the place the previous evening, she knew the lay of the land. She knew exactly where and how she would do what she had come here to do. And it would be easier to slip away unnoticed now that the day trippers were beginning to disperse. Now there was almost total darkness and stillness. The landscape felt like a three-dimensional collage of gloom. In the foreground, jagged slabs of slate filleted with stripes of silver. Further in the distance, massive mounds of charcoal shaping the horizon. Slowly but deliberately, feeling every bump in the soil beneath her sandals, every lift of her ankles, she moved forward towards the point at which the earth would give way to oblivion. And with every step, the nausea that had been pressing on her receded. Out of nowhere, a yawning boulder loomed ahead. She let out a gasp. Like some megalithic poltergeist, mouth wide open, it reared over her as if readying itself to shatter the silence. For the first time this evening, she felt her isolation and the fear that came with it. But she walked onwards, determined not to succumb to the play of the late evening shadows. She felt something disturb the rhythm of her movement, some creature lurking in the trees lining her pathway. Oh no, it must be the monkey that had glared at her when she arrived at Kate's Point. Cyrus had once shielded her from an evil-looking macaque intent on snatching her banana. An inner voice cried out, "Cyrus, where are you?" But the cry was met with silence. The trees had regained their stillness. There was no monkey, only her imagination playing tricks on her. Suddenly she lost her foothold and felt herself falling. For a heart-stopping moment of exhilaration, terror, regret, she braced herself for a nosedive through space. Then she hit a clump of bushes. She realized that she had stumbled into a ditch. She lay motionless to still the racing of her heart. Then she heaved herself up. Feeling foolish, she was relieved not to have twisted her ankle. She resumed her advance. She must be approaching the brink. But now each foot was creeping forward with a desperate deliberation, as if fearful of a last-minute change of mind. "Watch your step." For an instant, she didn't know what to make of the voice, but she told herself to ignore it. As she edged towards the black space ahead of her, the voice, this time closer, called out, "Are you okay?" Sheila could have decided in that split second to dash forward and jump. But the voice, it was a stranger's, yet like a voice she knew well, her daughter Nina's. She froze, unable to move forwards or backwards. "Can we help?" The voice was more tentative now. So there was more than one person. She wanted to rage against this intruder, whoever she was, snooping in the dark, frustrating her meticulously laid plans. She wanted to rage, but realized she couldn't. Slowly, she turned round and walked up the narrow path ahead of her. Against the glimmer cast by the lights of the shacks were silhouetted the figures of a man and a woman. She heaved herself up the slope, her legs straining against some force dragging her back. Why did she give up so easily? That's it.
Fantastic. I'm gonna just say one thing, and that is that we're glad you stuck with us, and thank you for that. It's so neat to discover things later in life, isn't it? It's such
It is absolutely, and this thing just came to me. I had no plan to write a novel or anything like that. I happened to read a newspaper article, which triggered the thought that that would make a nice story. Wow. And so that's how I got writing.
Wonderful.
But anyway, thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome. Yeah. And Feroza's got to take the credit for that, because we just spread the invitation wide and hoped that we would get a good catch in the net. And we haven't thrown anything back yet. So we really are thrilled with the catch tonight. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Then our next speaker, you already heard me mention that Kalpana Singh Chitnis is it's her birthday, and I wanted you to know that she's listed. She has a great website too. I want you to know she's listed as a poet, a writer, a filmmaker, but also an actor. And there's a really great photo of that features her enjoying an audience with His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. So she's had some brushes with some very interesting fellows, of course, and people. But I would imagine she would rank this event tonight right up there with the best of them. So Kalpana, the floor is yours. Now you're unmuted.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Momin, for welcoming me. And thank you, SALA members, board members, especially Firoza Jusawala, who introduced me to SALA a couple of years ago. And I have been just watching, reading a lot through Facebook and also going on the website, which inspired me to connect with all of you. And that resulted in me being on this Mushaira this year. So thank you all. And as you mentioned, on my birthday, I want to tell you that I turned 85 because I have been writing for 35 years. Oh no, I'm just kidding. I have been writing for sure for over 35 years. And that is just because I started write from my age, at the age of 14. And my first poetry book had come out at the age of 18, which fortunately won the Bihar Rajbhasha Award by the government. And now I have 4 poetry collections, and I would not go into detail of my bio much, but the latest I would mention my poetry collection, Bare Soul. Some of the poems from that book is going to the moon on NASA mission this year. So I feel very fortunate and blessed. And I'm very proud of one anthology. It's called Pause, Healing the Earth. This poem is dedicated to animal and wildlife. And there are some very beautiful poems, some very serious poems, and the whole range of poets from all over the world has participated, including United States Poet Laureate, Pulitzer Prize nominees, and so on. So please check that out, this book, and support it, because this is related to a cause which I truly believe in. And I will post a link at the end of my poetry reading. And the rest of the thing is on my website, kalpanasinghchitnis.com. I have been very preoccupied with all that is going on in the world right now. And for 1 week, all I could think is just the the devastation of war and everything that is happening. So I have chosen a few poems. Those are topical, and I hope you will like it. And my first, I have actually 4 poems, but keeping in mind the time, I have 7:13. So I try to finish in 10 minutes. And my first poem is dedicated to Ukraine. The title is Ground Zero. Splitting the lungs of the sky, a bomb drops like an hourglass filled with fire, emptying itself to the last atom. The hole left in the heart of the earth fills with the cry of millions fleeing their homes. Every heart in a war is ground zero. Every heart in a war is ground zero. And I continue with another poem that's also inspired by the invasion of Ukraine. War, a one-way street. Driving in my town, I imagine sirens blaring, tanks rolling on the roads and guns aiming at people resisting. I see no dove flying in the sky. The olive trees are eradicated from every corner of the earth. I shiver in fear like a leaf on an amputated branch. My children are home, but I cannot turn around. War is a one-way street. We can only pull back. The hospitals are filled with injured and charred bodies. The buildings and homes are engulfed in fire. I have no weapon to fight. I may not return home tonight. War is a phenomenon, the accumulation of our actions. What goes in our mind manifests in the world. The idea of who we are is not limited to our narrow discretions. I'm a person and a nation, an ally and an adversary. I am a woman raped and mutilated by my enemies, and a limb hanging from the window of a building struck. I'm a lifeless soldier lying on the street, and the one who is alive, does not know what he's fighting for. I'm bent like the little girl pulled up by force on the last train, about to leave the station, bound to a foreign land. I am the agony of a father in Exodus without his sons and brothers, and a sorrow frozen in the eyes of a young girl who presses her palm against the window pane of a train to touch the hands of her father staying behind to fight for their nation. I am the blood crusted on the snow after a night of heavy shellings on my city falling. There is no glory in a war. Every home has a shrine. A war cannot be defined. It can only be lived or imagined. And my other 2 poems are, one is for Palestine and the other is for India. And this poem is called My Post Office Without a Country, after Aga Shahid Ali. Every so often, nations fall from the world map as leaves and flowers fall from a tree hit by a thunderstorm. My poetry cannot travel to the Holy Land. Palestine isn't in the database of the United States Postal Office. I verify the address given to me by Muhammad. How could a country disappear in space? People standing in the queue look at my face. The clerk turns the screen around. The clerk turns the screen toward me and scrolls down. The state of Palestine wasn't found. My package was returned, and as I turned, I saw someone smiling at me. Palestine exists in the twinkle of her eyes. It exists because Muhammad lives there. He tells us the stories of his land. It exists because Yasser Arafat came to my homeland in a kifaya. It exists because I hear Palestine sing in Tarana of Rimbana. It exists because it burns in the eyes of Ahad Tamimi. It exists because it lives in the heart of 5 million Philistines. I will exit the line, but tell me first how Palestine went missing. I asked Handala, I asked my friend Muhammad in Ramallah, Sartawi in Jordan, and Rani in Galilee. I asked Shahid Ali of the country without a post office. I ask this question to myself as I write my post office without a country. And now, the next poem is on Corona pandemic, which has affected the entire world. And the title of this poem is "O Captain." After Walt Whitman. You cannot blame it all on June gloom. Sitting in your living room, surfing channels, watching plague, politics, and war. I turn the TV off and read Whitman. Oh, Captain, my Captain, oh, the bleeding drops of red. I can't wait for the sun to arrive in the Eastern Hemisphere. The night sails like a mammoth ship in dark rivers, scooping the dead. My father, mother, sister, and brother are ailing. Friends have left too soon. Hark, I hear the faint moaning of the city shackled from afar. The buildings hang from the sky lifeless, their tongues out the windows. The doors are closed, but the oxygen has escaped. There aren't enough shrouds and wood left in the market. Like doctors, nurses, and essential staffs, the forest working around the clock are making oxygen, coffins, and kindle for cremation. The animals lie on the graves, appear orphaned. Their masters have left. The banyan trees stand humble in the country, carrying clay pots hanging from their neck like the bhishtis offering water to the thirsty souls wandering in the state of Bardo. Shiva roams with his third eye open in villages and towns and charnel crowns, emitting fire from the center of his brows, lighting pyres of the abandoned on riverbed, drinking toxins flowing in the water to purify the rivers. Covered in ashes, in the embers flying, he contends the spread. He does not excel, he is blue, turning darker blue. The Himalayas melt in grief, the Ganges widens her shore. There are more pyres on the ground tonight than the stars lit in the sky. The truth sounds like a lie, but it isn't. There aren't enough beds and oxygens in the hospitals. There aren't enough vaccines and medical supplies. Who is accountable? Who is accountable? Who is accountable? I beg for help, help the helpless. Friends who couldn't come forward have promised they will forward my plea to the rich NRIs. Friends who couldn't come forward have promised they will forward my plea to the rich NRIs, a slap right in my face. For the first time, I'm angry for not being rich enough like Gates to help my country breathe with one fat check. Why do I worry? 33 million guards will take care of everything. Why do I bother? 1.36 billion people will manage their country. Oh, sister, you'll be okay. Oh, mother, try to sleep now. I shall breathe for you with my lungs expanded to the continents. Hope isn't a luxury, it is a necessity. I invite the bell and sit in silence. I write an alphabet on a piece of paper and repeat until it burns a hole in my heart. Oh, for oxygen, oh, for oxygen, oh, for oxygen. Oh, Captain, my Captain, rise up and hear the bells. Thank you all. I hope India, my captain, hear the sound of the spell. Thank you all and be well.
Thank you, Kalpana.
Thank you.
And happy birthday one more time.
Thank you so much. And by the time I'm getting ready to go, I will still keep this on and on full volume so I can hear.
Beautiful.
So yeah, so I'm here for maybe another 15 minutes or so. So if not, if I have the recording, I'll make sure I hear everybody who I have missed listening to. Thank you again for the opportunity, guys.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Now we've got a very special presentation, but also a feature, and that is, well, Feroza will introduce Manjula, but I wanted to just say this. She's been just a delightful presence, a beautiful face. She's engaged through the entire conference. You know, sometimes you invite a speaker or a distinguished guest and they pop in, do their thing, and then get out. And not so with Manjula. She's been here from the minute we started this morning at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. And now she is just about ready to read some of her work. She's a prolific author, illustrator, playwright, monologist. She's written books that either are collections of her monologues, but plays, Getting There, Harvest, Escape, The Island of Lost Girls, Laughter and Blood. We're delighted that this year she is one of our Distinguished Achievement awardees. And I just wanted to say that, and I'm very grateful, even though we've never met in person, but I'm so happy to get to know you today and tomorrow and into the future. But now here is Feroza's real introduction. And so Feroza, I give you the floor, my fellow co-chair.
Okay. Thank you so much, Moomin.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Moomin, and thank you, Manjula, for agreeing to do this. And yes, you're very right, Moomin. Manjula has been very, very sweet. She's actually my Facebook friend. I met her via one of her characters, Sukiyaki. and Suki, I commented on Sukiyaki, and then we became fast friends, and she's now my friend and my cheerleader. Times when I'm down, she's there for me. Night. And so I'm very fond of Manjula Padmanabhan, who is a distinguished author, playwright, artist, cartoonist. Those of you who live in South Asia and read The Hindu know Sukiyaki and love her, because she's a wonderful little girl who will do various things and get off into space and put on a ballerina tutu. And she's just wonderful, as is her creator. I have read her novel Escape, which she sent me, but she's best known for her plays Lights Out, Harvest, and she has published several books of prose, including Hot Death, Cold Soup, and she recently reprinted her memoir, Getting There. So in 2020, she published 2 volumes of her collected plays, Blood and Laughter, etc. I won't read all of those. I'll do more of that when she does our concluding plenary speech. And I would just urge everyone to be able to come to that plenary speech. And if you do want to register for the conference and come for Manjula's writer's workshop, please do that also, and be in touch with Moomin. You would just need to register for the conference to be able to do that. So I will turn this over to Manjula, but I have only one more thing to say. Since this has inadvertently turned out to be a celebration of Parsi writers, as it were, Manjula started with Parsiana, and she started with Jahangir, and she started with Adil Jasawala. So I will let Manjula talk about her experiences from the beginning, from Parsiana to what she does now.
Thank you so much, Feroza. Thank you, Moomin. Thank you all of SALA for having invited me. Since this is Hamara Mushaira and Moomin has made us all very conscious of time, I'm going to leap straight into my reading. But I do want to assure everyone that I'm really grateful to be here. It is, unlike many of you, I'm not an academic. I work very much alone, and it's unusual for me to attend anything so social and public as this. So it's an unusual experience for me, and I'm very grateful for your attention. I have in the chat box, I have posted my website address, which will, if anyone follows up, will tell you more. So I'm very grateful to Feroza for having mentioned my novel Escape, because my excerpt is going to be from Escape. So let me tell you a little bit. This is the cover of the novel. Escape is a science fiction novel set sometime in the future. It takes place in a South Asian country, which I don't name, a country that has managed to destroy all its women. Only one little girl remains. Her name is Meiji. She has been kept safe and happy and hidden by her three uncles. She calls them eldest, middle, and youngest. We, the readers, never know any other names. The novel begins at the moment when the uncles have understood that they can't protect their beloved child forever because they are aging and the world around them has only grown worse. So they have kept her in a state of arrested development for 16 years. So she looks a lot like a child, but she is 16 years old, maintained in childhood. She's entirely innocent of the outside world and also of her identity as a woman. She has not seen or met any other women, so she's not aware of what she is. The passage I will read is of the meeting she has with her eldest uncle, whom she calls eldest, as he, with great pain, wishes her farewell. So I'm going to start to read. Eldest says, I meant you will leave the estate altogether, go far away and never come back. Meiji's brow puckered. She felt a prickling horror within herself, as if the very foundation of reality were being turned inside out. Do you mean, she began. Eldest shook his head. Don't try to understand, because at this moment you have none of the equipment. You will climb out of the safe underground sea case, raise your head up to the sun and thrive. That is what we all hope for you. Nor will you be entirely alone, because I am sending your uncle youngest with you. Oh, said Meiji, I see. Though she didn't. It was impossible to understand why her life, her situation needed to change. What could any of this mean? The question must have shown on her face because eldest, who was watching her closely, said, It is over now, little squirrel. The book learning part of your life is done. We should have been more mindful of the passing of time, but we were not. Maybe in the years ahead, you will look back on us and judge us harshly. For your own sake, I hope you do. No, don't look surprised. The anger will help close the wounds that will open. Believe me, I know they will. When you understand the depth of our ignorance. He attempted a small joke, but his lips barely twitched. Try and hate us as much as possible, he said, his voice low and hoarse. Try and forget us, leave us behind, and move on ahead. Okay, said Meiji, her expression blank. The locks that held her being together were snapping open one by one. There was a heavy sensation around her eyes, but she could not imagine crying. A memory came to her now of the terrible boundlessness of the sky on the morning when her uncle Middle had taken her out to the fields. She had never been out in the open. To stand under that crushing limitlessness was to be flattened by it, reduced to nothing. Uncle Middle must have known what was to come. He would have guessed what she was going to feel. He must have decided he would help her in his own dark way by giving her a foretaste of it. Meiji remembered the force with which his fingers had dug into the bones of her face. At the time, he had seemed to be hurting her, and she had deeply resented his unkindness. Now, she wondered if, after all, he had been doing her a service by giving her something to bite on, as her life was sliced into ribbons. Eldest, watching her face, saw her age before his eyes. She drew in a breath. When? She asked. Tomorrow, he answered. Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent, Manjula. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out of your shell. Thank you. Moment, who's next? Rebecca is another one of my Facebook friends.
I didn't want Manjula to feel that she was being restricted. We just have a very we have.
I know that. I know that. Okay. I'm very conscious of not wanting to be that one who reads too much. So I wanted to do my bit. Thank you so much for having me.
And we're looking forward to tomorrow as well, because we have more to hear from you. So thank you for being here tonight. Yeah. I also wanted to just say before our next speaker, thank you to Sukanya Gupta, who's been a fantastic SALA secretary. And she's just been so wonderful in being timely and getting the communiques out and just doing a fantastic job. She's professional and competent and reliable, but mostly kind and lovely. So thank you, Sukanya Gupta, for being here tonight. And we appreciate you being such a wonderful audience as well. Oh, and Sukanya is also running to be the vice president of SALA next year. And so if you're attending the conference and you go to a general business meeting, you'll be able to register your vote on her behalf. So we'll move along to our next speaker on in the proceedings here. We've got, I just went ahead and wrote the lineup earlier. And so I'm so happy that our next speaker can be here tonight. We've had some difficulties with getting registered and the membership payment and all that. Sometimes some countries it's harder than others, and we have some bigger roadblocks. But Masrufa Nusrat could be here. At least we can offer the opportunity for her to be here live via Zoom. And so we're so happy that you're here, Masrufa. You've got the microphone. The floor is all yours.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be here, especially Momin and Firoza. Thank you very much. Let me introduce myself first. I teach at a private university in Dhaka at East West, and I am a literary translator. Many of my translations were published in several anthologies at home and abroad, and online magazines. I also have a book of my own. It's an anthology of 15 short stories by contemporary women writers from Bangladesh, Celebration and Other Stories. It was published in 2015. I'm working on my other books at the moment, longer projects. So that's me. Unfortunately, I never translated Selina Hussein, and so that's why I thought of translating one of her. I'm going to read one of her stories today. So this story by Selina Hussein was published recently in a book of 90 short stories by Bengali writers from Bangladesh and India on the theme of pandemic. It's called Ruddhodiner Golpo. The English translation would be Stories from Lockdown. So I'm going to read Selina Hussein's story, Jol Ronge Shonali Shurjo. I'm going to read the first section of the story and the last section of the story. The reason why I chose this story is because the hope and the theme of hope and precariousness and grievability of life is the theme of our conference. So that's why I chose this story. So I'll start reading. Just let me give the small storyline, short storyline. That is, the story is about a young woman who did not feel depressed by the pandemic, whereas her parents and elderly people in the society are very worried, very fearful of the death tolls. But she is very optimistic and hopeful because she spends her time in the slum areas helping the working class people to live their life. So I'll read from here, from the beginning. The Golden Sun of a Painting by Selina Hussein. From the day Bishakha was locked down in her house due to Corona, it seemed her perspective on the pandemic also changed. She received new messages from the nature rather than darkness of death. Everywhere there was something to make her more courageous. She could listen to inaudible voices that said, observe the new point in time. This time has never arrived in your life. Expand your consciousness with the sense of time. Say, make me immaculate, make me beautiful by dispelling all my impurities. Bishakha realizes that the greenness of nature has given her a new dimension to her perception. She laughed and spoke to herself. I challenge you, Corona. You are going to be the artist of the poetry in my life. I will not smash you under my feet, instead make you my friend. Her house transformed into a new space. The 5 rooms in the house have 5 new colors. The kitchen looks like a red, yellow, green painting to her. The flames in the stove do not look like fire, but a prism of colors and reaching out in every corner of her heart. The watercolor painting of Corona becomes even more pleasant with its mesmerizing essence. She comes from the bathroom. She comes before the bathroom. The source of water has been rearranged. The water runs swiftly when the faucet is turned on, like a cascade of water running down a hill. Everything appears to be beautiful to her and speak. See, my love is hidden in the greenery of the hill, and that is also the source of love. Do not deprive yourself of that. Let the fountain of love always flow like this till the end, and do not be afraid of the pandemic. Listen to the music of this stream of water and let its sound linger in your heart. Bishakha comes to the veranda. It's an unbound sky. It spreads the glow of the moon waning and waxing. She watches the sky with her heart content and says, you are my poetry. Fulfill my wish to leave and take the pandemic to your abode. Drive the pandemic away into the void. When she is sitting in her bedroom or in the living room, she could hear the happiness of some celebration ringing into her ears. The sound of drums beat on and the music of people's voice continue. The melody seems to diminish the pandemic that has spread out in the country. Bishakha claps delightfully. Her mother, Anjum Khatun, comes and stands next to her. She embraces her mother and questions, "Why do you always look so gloomy, Ma?" "I feel so scared. Don't you see the toll of death around? This disease has no treatment." Vishakha laughs out loud and claps again. Her father appears before them from the bedroom. She chides her, "What's wrong with you?" "Baba, some lines of poetry just came across my mind." "Stop talking about poetry. I don't want to see you write poetry again. You have become nuts from writing poetry." She goes to the very, okay, from now I'm reading at the end of from the end of the story, the last few lines. She goes to the Berrybat Dam in the evening. Everyone living there were sitting with their children. The Burigonga River flows below that dam. The water is quietly flowing. Everyone was wearing masks. Everyone stood up seeing her approach. She keeps a social distance and greets them and asks, and greets them and asks, "Are you all doing well? Is there a way to feel well? I have taken the responsibility to feed you all. Oh my God, we're so fortunate. Are you providing meals for us? Everyone, please stand in line." The people form a line with enough distance between them. Everyone needs to eat rice with eggs and potatoes. Yes, yes, we need to eat rice. Everyone clap, say we want to eat rice that will fill our hearts and belly to our content. Everyone claps and says what she taught them to say. Vishakha returns home with their smiling faces in her mind. She claps while crossing the road. The streets have become deserted. She looks around and realizes that this should not be the picture of a city. The life of the city must be returned. She tells herself that the art of her poetry is to feed the poor, and we shall overcome the struggle of life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Masrufa. And I'm glad you could be here tonight. And I know that it's not tonight where you are. All right. Our next speaker is Rebecca Hawk. And boy, we've had a lot of back and forth in the emails, but it's so nice that you're here tonight. And I'm just going to let the floor go to you right away. Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I've been very eager about participating for the last 3-4 years. And my student Asif Iqbal, Dr. Asif Iqbal, who's just finished his PhD in Michigan, he has been my student. And earlier, Zinat Afreen has been my student, and they're doing wonderfully at SALA. Yes, she came from Aligarh, and I was the one who was requested to take her written examination. I told the head, "Sir, this is one good first class, we must have her." So they're doing very well, and Kasser Haq is a good friend, and we are all colleagues in the English department at Dhaka University. And well, I was a Kilim scholar briefly, to beat my own drum, blow my own horn. I was a Kilim scholar at Dalhousie, and I studied when I first started in early 80s, gender women's studies. I studied for 6 months with Professor Sally Shuttleworth, who was later in Sheffield and then director of Cambridge, Oxbridge. And now I go by as a cultural studies specialist, interdisciplinary. My training is performing arts, visual arts, cinema, painting, and I include that. And I was invited as a scholar, resident scholar, to do a specialized course on 20th century American fiction and drama, especially the World Wars and ancillary art and film at UCLA and Vanderbilt. That was in 1995. And I've been writing, but I've not been very serious about being a writer because I've been very serious about as an academic. So I have 2 academic books, Women, Gender and Literature, and one co-edited. I did the centenary, I organized the conference under the auspices of Bangladesh Association of American Studies, and it was an international conference. And we have the book, and I've been writing for the Daily Star since 1987. In 1995, the editor requested us, I was one of 5 to start the literary page. So in the literary page, I used to write poems and off and on. And so this was my first book. And now, hopefully, I'm preparing a manuscript for the second book, a chapbook, and another book of criticism. So let's see what happens. This pandemic, also my health reasons. I was in Australia when Dr. Momin Qazi and Firoza Jaswallah, we had correspondences, emails, and on Facebook. And one thing I must point on, Dr. Qazi, if you would be so good enough, kind enough, and generous enough, PayPal is impossible from Bangladesh. What we do with other organizations, we online credit card, MasterCard or Visa, which makes it very simple and easy and permissible under the government and the Bank of Bangladesh rules. So my students who are like Mafruha, who presented a paper on the Ibis trilogy, Amitabh Ghosh, she was also in a bit of a tizzy what to do. So if your admin would consider the problems we have, credit card is no problem. No, I think I've wasted some of your precious
let me
time.
answer that just very briefly.
Yes.
PayPal, Venmo, our bank will allow to accept payments. Wells Fargo, we can do that, and the wire transfer fee is an extra $16. We've talked about perhaps waiving that for you guys. I mean, paying for it, subsidizing it from the Wells Fargo account by the South Asian Literary Association. But the problem is we can't just take a credit card. If other banks have a hard time taking a credit card, then we as an organization certainly can't accept a credit card. But what we can do is promise that in the future we will pay the fee that the wire transfer fee that Wells Fargo will pay. In other words, we're paying for your country's extra machinations, not punishing you for having to have a payment from a country that's not friendly with PayPal. So I just want you to know we're on it. We're trying so hard.
Thank you.
Even this,
because we have a whole boatload of brilliant people who can contribute to SALA, and so thank you.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, even this conference, we've tried to make it easier for everybody by virtue of having an online conference. Anyway, so while I appreciate your comment, I just wanted you to know we're not blind to the issue.
I know that. I know.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Now, I want to read from this. It is an early poem, and I'll just let the poem. It's Circles of Passion. I asked you, like the 7 stages of grief, are there 7 stages of love? You did not answer. Is it fear that inhibits you? Do not be afraid. Let me lead you in our dance of passion. 7 concentric circles from the outside to the innermost sphere, from the body to the soul by way of the heart. Slow, rhythmic steps, gliding, swaying, whirling dervishes, reaching, soaring until 2 souls merge and meld. And we complete the ritual, not around the flaming tongues of fire, but around the iridescent, incandescent glow of my burning passion. Okay, the second poem is included in this 6 seasons. I think this is now moribund. We've had a few volumes and then people have scattered everywhere. Sudeep Sen was one of the editors, and he's still, when he left Dhaka, he was here for 8 years. And then I think they all went with, I have here one sort of medium-sized poem, 4 or 5 stanzas, and a series of haiku. I won't read the haiku. Moonshine Mystery. Is there a silver moonstone for me at the edge of the violet mystery? Is there a tall mahogany tree for me at the virgin forest's boundary? Is there a magic mantra for me in the weird whispering breeze? My gleaming surreal silhouette swims across the sodden gloam. My limpid besotted eyes rain blood-red lunatic dreams. My smoldering lips kiss wild moonshine mead. My savage toes bite tangled roots in euphoric greed. Steeped in a glazed seance, my moon-wrapped essence dissolves, cascades to capture the eerie penumbra of elusive, cyclical samsara. So there. And the third poem is a kind of prose poem. It just happened in real time. My father passed away 25th March. In a few days, it will be a week or so, it will be his 6th death anniversary. He passed away 2016, 25th March. And this, I was just feeling sort of down, and this came to me, and the 25th March 2018. And I have this published in the this image of this green vase with flower, which I keep at the center table. This was bought during the Second World War by my grandmother, and I found it after she was long gone under the four-poster bed filled with cobweb. It is Czechoslovakian heavy green handmade blown glass, and for me, I have kept it. It is for me, as it is an icon of my grandparents' house and home. So, shadow time. Notes on living in two temporal scales simultaneously. Memories of my father are keeping me awake tonight. 2 hours to Fajr Azan on the Friday before Independence Day. 26th March is up. The street cleaner's jharu gratingly rubs the asphalt below my bedroom window for a few minutes. Silence again as he moves on further down the street. 2 years ago, father's journey to his eternal abode began at this hour and ended at 2 o'clock in the daylight of March 25th. And time stopped for me. Work stopped for everybody the next day, Independence Day. Frozen in grief, my mind stopped its colloquium with the world. I lay immobile and numb in my home as father lay lifeless and cold on his bed of ice. Burial with full military honors and ceremony the day after Independence Day. September of 2 years ago, when spring bloom in the southern hemisphere, autumnal chill in the northern, I am in my daughter's home, recovering from torpid days of depression, recovering from cataract surgery, clearer vision with implanted lens, dreaming of talking with dad in the middle of the night, the witching hour, jolted to alert wakefulness by sudden silver light and smattering of lashing rain against the window pane. I'm back in the lap of my surreal nor'wester, my Kalboishaki. Turn, 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 my mind sings with Mary Hopkins in 1968. For every season there is time to reap and sow, to be born, to die. The haunting image of the woe-begone Tithonus floats up in my mental landscape. The woods decay and fall. The vapors weep their burden to the ground. Man comes and tills the field and lies beneath. Spontaneously, rhythmically, Tennyson's lines emanate from my circumambient sadness or at being left bereft. Yet, there is gratitude in my heart too for father's peaceful passing to the other side. His soul had returned whence it came, trailing clouds of glory in the vigorous flowering Bangla season of hope and renewal in Falgun. 20 days before Pohela Boishak, a grief-stricken daughter says final farewell to her father in the crowded city of her ancestors. 2 years have passed with the length of 24 months of good days and bad days, of family quarrels and reconciliations, of marriages and new births. Father's transition brings change and transition in his children's lives. Thus flows forward the current of the river of life in the natural order of things, in the inexorable law of time and generation. With 2 days more to the second anniversary of Father's death, tonight I contemplate the paradox of life, of the intricate mystery of the warp and weft of the human loom. I look lovingly at the antique moss green Belgian green glass vase, a treasured object from the post-Second World War period in Dhaka. I found it under my grandfather's mahogany four-poster bed in our Armanitola home in my late teens. Now, this vase is on the oval dining table in my own home, a resplendent vessel for bright gerbera flowers. The loud colors call out to me to paint a rainbow. The bold white, pink, orange, red, yellow, purple, long-stemmed petals of Falgun are shouting to catch the wild spirit of the approaching Kalboshaki. Green vessel with vibrant life, life's continuity artfully contained in one authentic place, in one specific space in real time. A seamless horizontal line from my grandfather to my father to me. From the grandfather who named me Titli when I was a toddler, later inspired grandfather named me Funny when I was five, a wild questing spirit. Green vase, a concrete syncretic symbol, a family icon cementing the generations across time and space, across the earth and the heavens. In my vision, you, immutable green vase, are the matrix and the nexus of my family's master narrative. In the quiet of the night, a sly mosquito hums close to my cheek. The tick-tocking wall clock is a slow goods train on tracks somewhere afar. It is 3:30 in the morning, almost 2 hours to first light. BBC News, Syria, and Ghouta, and children. Oh, the beautiful suffering angels caught in man's inhumanity, insanity. Forgive us, Divine Father, forgive our trespasses. Look kindly on the meek and the innocent. Kalboshaki, come, come, cleanse this earth of wickedness and killing, wash away our sins. Help us open a new humane Halkhata. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next speaker is, I'm going to mispronounce it. I don't want to though. Shayamasri?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah,
I'm here. Yeah, it's Shayamasri.
Shayamasri. Okay, very good.
Yes.
You're up. You have the microphone. The floors are yours.
Greetings from West Bengal in India. I'm Shayamasri. I teach English literature at Durgapur Women's College, affiliated with Qazi Nazrul University in Asansol. I'm honored and delighted to be a part of this Mushaira. It's wonderful listening to brilliant poets, wonderful fiction writers, and talented literary translators. I'm grateful to Professor Momin Qazi for giving me an opportunity to read my poems in this Mushaira. I'm pretty excited to share the platform with Manjula Padmanabhan as I teach one of her plays, Lights Out, in my college. I have been writing poems since 2018. Some of my poems have been published in some journals and magazines, and I'm ready with the manuscript of my first book, yet waiting to hear from the houses. Today I will read 2 poems. For the first poem, Mind Tree, it is on motherhood as viewed from the perspective of a woman who is not a biological mother. The name of the poem is Mind Tree. You asked me several times the brand of my perfume. You even searched my jewelry box and made a long face when all your suspicions went wrong, like a morn that couldn't tell the day. You never believed me when I said that jasmine is a mind tree. It grows inside me, in my mind, loaded with floral fragrance. In my soul, it grows to live. I water the sapling every day with the wishes that soar above the uterine walls of this burnt house. I sing a lullaby every night to the tree born in my mind. I'm a mother, 'tis my child, though you tell me endlessly that I am a childless woman. Now I will read my second poem. It is on marriage, as marriage is viewed by an unmarried woman, especially a woman who has refused to get married. The title of the poem is Forgive Me, Dear Papa. Forgive me, dear Papa, for being a mole underneath your eye. It bothers you while reading a newspaper and makes you feel depressed sometimes. When a train rattles in the dumbness of night, you wake up and walk into our little balcony. The groans of the city remind you endlessly. The mole in your eye is growing cancerous, big as an unmarried girl of 36. She stands like a skyscraper, shaking hands with the sun in the smoky sky, whistling to the strands of her graying locks like the age-defying men you admired in the Bombay movies. Rain clouds float across your eyes. On your head, the sky falls every now and then. In the tip of your fountain pen, shadows quiver with a safety pin. You complain to Mum. Her saris grumble in a trunk of tin. I hold your hands to say really what I mean. Forgive me, dear Papa. To you I sing. My song reels down the Kashmir green. Thank you.
Beautifully done. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Dr. Maji. We appreciate your poetry.
Thanks.
All right, our next reader is Parul Hinzen. And Parul, I recognize you, and we're looking forward to hearing your reading tonight.
Thank you, Momin. It's really nice to be here. And thank you, Feroza, also for including me. I've gotten to know SALA basically through the Facebook page. I'm a writer and a journalist. I'm not an academic, but I guess in another life I would like to be. And so I've really enjoyed, just listening to the discussions or being part of the discussions on the Facebook page. And I've also really enjoyed this evening and listening to everyone's poetry and fiction. Lovely to hear writing about the subcontinent. I will be reading from a short story that I published in, I don't have to hold it up, but it's Pleiades magazine. It's a literary magazine. And I've been working for a very long time on a novel, which is getting completed. But in terms of fiction that I've published, it's been mostly short stories because my novels take me forever to write. So this is a short story called Rouse, and I'm reading just an excerpt of it. I hope I don't go over 10 minutes. And it's set in Germany, where I lived in the 1990s. And Rouse in German means out or get out. Rouse. The machine rumbled and banged against the wall as it spun, and I got up from the table in the living room where I was working. Our kitchen doubled as a laundry room, the washer trembling deliriously beside the sink. I'd gotten used to scrubbing dishes by hand in Germany, to buying small amounts of groceries accommodated by Marcus's wicker shopping basket, which resembled the one Little Red Riding Hood carried into the woods. I moved a fat jar of pickles out of the way to retrieve a purple basin from atop the waist-high fridge. Things that were common here looked to me like they came out of a warped fairy tale world, a lost time trailing a dank, sour odor. I squatted to pop open the washer door, unpeeling my husband's twisted garments from the metal drum and lobbing them into the basin. My mother-in-law had corrected me once, seeing Marcus's undershirts pinned up by the shoulders on the drying rack. I made sure to hang them by the hem now, so they kept their shape. If Marcus even jokingly called me a hausfrau, I shot him a look, though I found myself following his mother's example, designating Mondays as laundry day and ironing his shirts as she had demonstrated, cuffs first. But through certain brusque remarks, I made it clear I didn't consider the care of a two-room apartment my job. I would figure out something to do here. When I got lonely towards evening, I would play old records I'd listened to in high school or go out for a walk, numb and distant from everything around me. Back in the living room, I winced to see my papers strewn all over the tiny dining table, as if I couldn't put my thoughts in order. Bursts of shouting erupted somewhere down the street as I sorted the papers into piles. Printed materials about city government, articles ripped from German newspapers about attacks on foreigners, notes from my interviews with a Pakistani man. 3 days a week, I went to language class, and occasionally I succeeded in pitching an article to an American publication. Until I got married and left New York for Frankfurt last year, I'd been a press officer at the United Nations, working on temporary contracts and freelancing between them. The Pakistani man spoke no English, so we'd communicated in a combination of German and the language he called Urdu and I called Hindi. My German teacher would shake his head in his hands, making a comic display of his perplexity at my situation. An Indian girl who had grown up in America and become an immigrant for the second time in Germany. Outside, the voices exploded in fury. I stopped reading over the Pakistani man's words and sat very still, listening apprehensively. The shouts came in spasms. It might be protesters like those I used to pass by outside the UN. The Haitians for Aristide, Bosnian Muslims, Tibetans, Cambodians, and others desperately raising the alarm for an end to their abuse. I wondered if a crowd had gathered at the far end of our street, in the plaza outside the Frankfurt Zoo, where gorillas manically paced their cages, hemmed in by apartment blocks. Ausländer raus, the first intelligible words rose from the murky roar. Foreigners out. I went to the wide window on the other side of the room, yanking the Venetian blind up like an enormous eyelid. The street was oddly deserted for midday, a drab passage between the main road and the zoo, lined with low-rise buildings like brown concrete cartons. An elderly German man leaned out of his balcony in the spring light, twisting sharply to the right as if he had traced the source of the shouting. The phrase was hurled like a brick through the air. Ausländer raus. My cheek pressed to the glass. I peered down the street, frightened that a band of neo-Nazis might turn a corner, primed to kick their way into buildings. Mixed into our neighborhood of middle-class Germans was a polyglot jumble of Turks, Eastern Europeans, Greeks, and Italians. On TV, the thuggish men, armored in black leather, condemned the influx of asylum seekers and refugees. Deutschland, Deutschland, they growled, gripping the land by its name like a shield to their breasts. The shouting subsided, but I kept looking up and down the narrow street. Traffic rushed by as usual on the main road, Hanauer Landstrasse, half a block to the left. A tram struck its bell. People disembarked. I was all right. I wasn't alone. Others were likely at home too. The Sicilian housemeister, who kept the building clean and ran the pizzeria on the ground floor, the distraught Yugoslavian fellow, who was always muttering to himself, his parents' apartment directly below ours. On weekends, people in a nearby apartment played Arabic serenades, whose flourishes brought back the sweet, forgotten sounds of film music I'd heard on All India Radio as a child. When I met Marcus in New York, I couldn't have imagined him living in such dreary surroundings, unaware then of his frugal habits. He'd been an intern at an investment bank, cutting an elegant figure in his sleek European suits and gleaming shoes. Here, people found it difficult to believe we were a couple, a handsome German man and a watchful Indian girl. At restaurants, waiters inquired if we were together before presenting the check. In the streets, people spoke to Marcus and overlooked me unless he turned my way, bringing me to their notice. What can I do? My glance fell to an open notebook scribbled with the Pakistani hotel clerk's words. Should I begin my story about foreigners there with his plea? I called the clerk late at night when he wasn't busy at the front desk. Recently, he had been elected to a shadow foreigners parliament, created by the municipality as an experiment in giving non-citizens a voice. A quarter of Frankfurt was foreign-born. Though the foreigners' representatives lacked the power to legislate or to decide anything, they convened one evening a month in the medieval city hall to air their people's hopes and grievances. Thus, I had watched a Black parliamentarian stand up to demand why a Nigerian asylum seeker who had died in police custody remained anonymous in press reports. Doesn't a Black man have a name? He thundered under the lights after hours in an almost empty city hall. Is he no one? On the phone, the Pakistani clerk yielded reluctantly to my questions, as though describing his troubles would make them more real. His son's teacher had possibly blighted the boy's future by assigning him to the bottom tier secondary school in a rigid educational system.
Arul, we just, if you could kind of cut to the end,
Okay, I'm almost at the end.
Very good.
Hauptschule was for low achievers headed for vocational training. An African teacher's aide had taken the clerk aside at a conference to assure him his son was as bright as any German child promoted to gymnasium, the most prestigious of the academies. It was just that the class teacher couldn't recognize intelligence in a brown child, the teacher's aide said. Switching schools was impossible once the teacher had made the placement, the Pakistani acknowledged ruefully. What can I do? He'd asked me. Thank you.
I grew up during the summers in Germany where my father was stationed. He had a German wife, my stepmother. She was my closest parent of all people. She just passed away a few years ago, but I always hear in my mind the repeated phrase you have in your story, raus,
Raus, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that story.
Sure, yeah. It's very nice to be here.
So it looks like the next person on our schedule, Samrita Gupta, is not here. So what that means is Feroza and I might actually have enough time to read a poem each or two. And so they're very short, Feroza told me, and I know mine is. So is that okay? Would you guys indulge us to be able to read a poem or two each? Feroza?
Yeah.
Does that sound good? I also wanted to just thank everyone for being here, and I didn't know if anyone else might just have like a really short, maybe one or 2 minute poem they might want to share who wasn't on the agenda. I wanted to kind of open that up to everyone if you just would let me know in the chat. But otherwise, it's 10:18 where I am, and I've been on the Zoom all day. And so having seen no extra readers volunteering, I'll go ahead and just give the microphone over to Feroza. The floor is all yours, fellow co-chair.
Okay, Momin, I was actually going to read only half a poem, but I feel that you haven't had the chance to do anything at all. So you've been coordinating this whole thing, and I thought, well, maybe he should have a little bit of time. But I will continue the Parsi theme. You know, everybody knows here, most people are women, the Gara sari, right? There's a great resurgence of the embroidered Gara sari everywhere. But my Gara, the one that I treasure the most, is quite old, and I have two very old ones. So I'll say this, and it's from my book, Chiffon Saris. And chiffon saris are always associated with Parsi women also. So Garas, I keep my saris in a safety deposit box. Garas my grandmother gave me, 500 years old. That's an exaggeration. Some only 200 years old, and one embroidered by the other grandmother, Papaiji. Beautiful white satin with pink and purple birds of paradise sitting on green branches, all connected over the 5.5 yards of cloth necessary to wrap and pleat around the hips and shoulders. I should take them out and wear them, I tell the bank attendant, as she looks longingly at the box full of textiles. But where can one wear them? Here, we both say together. 500-year-old crows perched on purple silk, brought from China, commissioned in China, worked with the most delicate Chinese fingers, stitch at a time, serving the fates of the Chinai family of Hyderabad, India, Parsi traders with China. Thank you. Momin, it's all yours. You read. You've been working very hard. You should have some voice.
Thank you all so much, and what a great night. And I hope you feel like it was a successful Hamara Mushaira.
Yes, this was probably the most successful event we've done all day. Good attendance, great participation.
Thank you. I do have two short poems. I have a lot of different kinds of writing. I'm a mixed genre, just like I'm a mixed person, mixed ethnicity, mixed experience, mixed culture. But what I have here is just it's a little sonnet, and hopefully you'll get a sense of my sense of humor. And this one, it was inspired by just these beautiful big trees that have wonderfully wide circumference tree trunks. And I was also just bemoaning the idea that I lived next to a frat house, it seemed like a few years ago. So this one's called That Is If They Still Exist. Oh, that I would come back as a thick-trunked tree, positioned just outside a temple in Tibet, not bothered by the drone of 1,000 voices over time saying, Om, though wondering if that too might be something that wears me down a bit. Would I want to protest that literal monotony, the one-note wonder bred from a persistent desire for harmony and tranquility, inner and outer, ringing out from the throats of men who prefer the company of nature and its strained communion? Or Would I rather have been situated next to a loud frat house? There you go. And I think about trees a lot. I think about nature. I love to write about birds and especially, but I think about trees too. I wrote a poem. I won't read it tonight, but it's called Adult Tree. And it basically asks, I don't think trees give a rat's ass about people's infidelities, but they want, anyway, I won't read that one tonight, but thank you very much. This one is called.
We want that one. We want that one.
I can find it very quickly, but this one is inspired by a request for a poem for a book that's centered on wine, not wine WHINE, but the drinking kind, right? And so I've thought about it a long time. I'm not a big wine drinker. But I do have a history with another group that is associated very much with wine. And there's lots of groups over history that have been associated with wine. So you'll appreciate this, especially Manjula, who is a playwright. It's called In Remembrance of Me. Here's the epigram. In the quote, in the same way after supper, he took the cup saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me." The first epistle of Paul to the church in Corinth, 11, verse 25. Sleep is a strange thing, the place of sought after liminality, of in-betweenness, straddling the here and the there, where I know but don't know, where I remember but only in pieces, a short hibernation, a miniature death. Wine takes me there, and I am present only there. And when I am back here, I only remember in pieces, before what I have known so surely is gone again, and almost certainly never existed. You are like that. Were you ever there? Did I ever know you? It seemed so. How can I believe when only my name means believer? You said to remember you when I drink it, but how can I do that when I can hardly recall that time we once ate? Did I dream that supper? Did I make up that sacrifice? The bread, the breaking, the pouring out, the drinking? Or was it just a story I read about the first of the 4 Dionysian rituals, the slaughter of the piglets before the actors take the stage, and I reawaken? Thank you. You guys are so kind. I'm gonna very, very, very quickly find that poem. I didn't print it up, but I must have it here somewhere. The notion of the trees don't care. But if I can find it very quickly here, I'll do that.
Keep floor, Momin. You've been going all day without doing anything. And
well, I found it. Here it is. It's called Adult Tree. Right, Adult Tree. Okay. The trees don't care about infidelities. Your petty theft, the taking of a glance that no one saw, the stealing of a breath, how you duck into the hidden spaces, slip into her hidden places, and slip away. The trees don't care how careful you are to whisk away the hairs from her sheets. The trees don't care while we adjust our clothes, put our rings back on before we leave, and return to our keyboards and TVs and dinners and the meds and laundry and Facebook and litter boxes and scooping and growing older. But the trees are faithful, though they wear their rings on the inside. Thanks so much.
Well said. Well said.
Thank you.
Lovely voice. Thank you.
And you know, I love writing poems, and but you know, the short stories, they're kind of fun too. And so it's been so nice to get to hear tonight, you know, the mixture of genres, you know, the poems and the short fiction and the play and the nonfiction. It's just, and the translation. So what a super cornucopia tonight. I appreciate it, and I hope you feel appreciated.
We do.
Everybody who's registered for the conference, please come to Manjula's writing workshop tomorrow.
Yes.
Please come to the writing workshop.
Yes.
What time is that?
All right. Tomorrow.
Just want to thank Firoza. Thank you so much. I wanted to come to America again after many years in 2021, but hopefully maybe 2023, I will meet you in person. If Homeland Security says, yeah, you can come.
Very good.
I haven't been since 1995. So thank you. Thank you, Momin Kazi. Thank you, Firoza. And thank you, all you lovely poets and writers. I'll take my leave now. It's now,
good night.
I started early, it was morning. So good night to you.
Good night.
And I say good afternoon, whoever it is. Yeah.
And the
See
session
you
tomorrow.
hopefully next conference.
The session tomorrow is from noon to 1:15, and that is Manjula Padmanabhan's creative writing workshop. And then in the late afternoon, we will have a keynote speech from 5:30 to 6:10 Central Standard Time. And that will be a fantastic speech by Manjula again.
So we hope it'll be fantastic. Thank you for
I worked very hard on that, so please be there. Thank
All right.
you.
Well, it is now 10:29.
Bye-bye.
We are going to finish on time. So take care,
Great.
everyone.
Wonderful. It's wonderfully organized. And thank you.
Thank you so much.
Moomin, Firoza, and Cynthia, who is, I think, not here at the moment. But thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.